Awaken your spirit. Chosen ones. Watch closely, because what you're about to witness isn't luck. It's a disappearing act so precise that even the laws of expectation can't catch it. It's a rare thing to see someone operate in a way that confuses people at a cellular level. Studies in behavioral psychology show that humans are hardwired to notice patterns. But when those patterns break, our brains panic just slightly before curiosity kicks in. That's exactly what happens when you pull off the impossible, and everyone who doubted you is forced to watch. Their eyes widen, their jaws drop, and somewhere in their subconscious, they start taking notes they'd never admit aloud. You're not just succeeding. You're dismantling assumptions like a magician cutting through steel chains, leaving a trail of disbelief in your wake. The funny part is, the very people who tried to anticipate your next move, the ones quietly betting against you, smiling when they thought you'd fail, are the ones left blinking, muttering under their breath, and occasionally wondering if they should have paid more attention to those early warning signs. And here's the kicker. The more impossible it seems to them, the more terrifying it becomes. Because humans are terrified not just of power, they're terrified of unpredictability, and nothing messes with their sense of control quite like watching someone operate beyond the limits they thought were immovable. You're Houdini in sneakers, a ghost in their boardroom, a whisper that keeps becoming a storm. So buckle in, because the story isn't about what they expected. It's about what they couldn't compute, couldn't contain, and couldn't prepare for. And as you move through the next moments, they'll be staring, not with admiration, not with respect, but with a mix of disbelief, envy, and just a hint of panic. Because when someone consistently does the impossible, it's not just shocking, it's contagious. And if you're paying attention, you might just catch a little of that magic for yourself. Number 1, they studied your limits carefully, and then watched you behave like those limits never existed. Your enemies didn't just underestimate you, they invested time, attention, and mental energy into figuring out exactly how far you could go. Every mistake, every hesitation, every weak moment, they noted it. They created a mental blueprint of you, mapping what they thought were your boundaries. They tracked your reactions, observed your patterns, and convinced themselves they had a clear picture of what you were capable of. They felt safe, knowing that based on what they had collected, your potential was predictable. Then you did something terrifying. You operated entirely outside that map. You moved past what they assumed was your ceiling, with the kind of precision and quiet persistence that left them frozen. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance. It was deliberate, and it was real. And to them, it didn't just feel unexpected, it felt impossible. The mind doesn't respond calmly when a carefully constructed narrative collapses. It reacts with shock, confusion, and sometimes fear. That's why they stare. Not because you cheated, but because their calculations failed. They believed their knowledge of you gave them control, a kind of psychological leverage. They expected you to stumble at the points they had highlighted, to show weakness where they thought it inevitable. And when none of it happened, when you moved as if those boundaries never existed, it shook them to the core. Watching someone quietly exceed expectations, someone they thought they knew, is one of the most disorienting experiences a person can endure. They realize they were wrong. They realize that observation doesn't equal comprehension. And most of all, they realize that you aren't operating under the same rules that they play by. There's an unspoken terror in seeing a person transcend what seems preordained. It isn't just about skill or strategy, it's about the sheer audacity of existing beyond their projections. You didn't just surprise them. You rewrote the possibilities they had already drawn, and in that disbelief, in that impossible gap between expectation and reality, they find themselves staring, silent, unsettled, and fully aware that they are witnessing something rare, something they don't understand but can't stop watching. Number 2. Your survival alone already destroyed the story they told about you behind your back. Some people never expected you to make it. They had already written your story for you in the shadows, quietly passing it around as though it were fact. In their minds, your failures were inevitable, your setbacks insurmountable, and your endurance a temporary illusion. They whispered about you in hallways, in meetings, in private chats, every detail exaggerated or interpreted to fit the narrative that you were fragile, replaceable, or bound to falter. They didn't plan to confront you directly. They didn't need to. They assumed the system, life, and circumstances would do it for them. Then you survived. Not just in the basic sense, but fully, and on your own terms. Every setback they assumed would crush you became another step in your forward motion. Every expectation of defeat they held on to disintegrated as you continued to exist, to thrive, and to act with quiet but unstoppable momentum. Your survival shattered their story like glass. Their narrative was built on the assumption that pressure would bend you, that scrutiny would break you, that their judgments were enough to define your fate. None of it worked. You didn't just disprove them. You erased their version of reality entirely. The unsettling part for them isn't even your success. It's the realization that their belief in your failure was never about you. It was about control, about comfort, about justifying their own decisions and positions by putting someone else beneath them. They had constructed a world where your collapse made sense, where your absence was a certainty, and now that world is gone. They can't reconcile the person you've become with the person they told themselves existed, and that's why they stare. They can see you functioning, achieving, surviving, and moving forward in ways they had never allowed themselves to consider. Their discomfort isn't jealousy alone, it's cognitive dissonance. They are forced to confront that their predictions were meaningless, that their assumptions were fragile, and that someone they underestimated, not just once, but continuously, has rewritten the rules of expectation entirely. Your survival is more than endurance. It's a quiet, relentless dismantling of every secret story they told about you, leaving them bewildered, unsettled, and powerless to stop what they didn't see coming. Number 3, they secretly relied on your self-doubt as part of their strategy. Some people don't confront you directly. They don't make themselves obvious. Their strategy is far more subtle, far more insidious. They count on your own hesitation, your inner questioning, your second-guessing. They rely on the very thing you carry inside yourself, the doubt, the uncertainty, the what if I fail moments, to do the work for them. They whisper possibilities of failure. They sow small seeds of distraction. They create scenarios where you feel inadequate. They never have to lift a finger. They just wait. And they wait patiently, because they know the mind can betray itself when given enough time and pressure. Then you do something terrifying for them. You act anyway. You move forward even when the voice inside your own head is screaming, "You can't," even when every scenario they constructed in secret aligns to stop you. You take action. You push through. And the world reacts, but most importantly, they react. Because their secret strategy depended entirely on your self-imposed limitations. Without those, their entire plan collapses silently, invisibly, and without warning. They trusted that your inner critic was stronger than your drive. They assumed that hesitation would eventually paralyze you, that fear would immobilize you, that overthinking would quietly sabotage every attempt. But when you act, when you step forward while carrying all that doubt, you turn their strategy into a trap for them. Their calculations, their secret assumptions, their patience, all of it is wasted because you refuse to let your own insecurities define your trajectory. Watching someone succeed when the opposition counted on internal struggle is more disorienting than facing an external challenge. It's unnerving because it means their control was never real. They relied on something personal, intimate, private, and it failed spectacularly. And that failure looks like magic to them because it's invisible, it's quiet, and it's relentless. You didn't just defy them. You defied the invisible chains they believed were unbreakable, and now they are left staring at you, trying to comprehend how someone so quietly human could be so impossibly unstoppable. Number 4. You kept progressing without needing permission from the people who expected to control your direction. Some people aren't upset about your success itself. They're upset because they weren't asked. They expected a say in your decisions, a seat at the table of your life, or at the very least, the power to influence your direction. They assumed their opinions, their judgments, and their approval were necessary for you to move forward. They built quiet, mental checkpoints, believing you would pause, hesitate, or compromise whenever their presence loomed. They thought your path would bend around their expectations, like a river conforming to every obstruction along its banks. Then you proved them wrong. You moved forward anyway, unbound and unapologetic. You didn't ask for permission, and you didn't seek validation. Every step you took, every milestone you reached, was proof that control is an illusion when someone refuses to submit to it. That kind of independence is unsettling for observers because it removes their leverage entirely. They can no longer predict, manipulate, or influence the outcomes they were counting on. Your momentum isn't just success, it's a quiet demonstration of freedom that they can neither touch nor understand. What terrifies them most isn't the result, it's the fact that you never needed them to get there. They expected hesitation, consultation, or compromise. They assumed that without their input, you would stall or flounder. But when you bypassed their expectations entirely, you shattered their sense of authority over your life. They realize, often too late, that their power was never real. It only existed because they thought you would let it. Your independence forces them to confront an uncomfortable truth. Influence is meaningless if the person it targets refuses to be influenced. It looks effortless on your end, but to them it's chaotic, confusing, and unnerving. You aren't just succeeding, you're dismantling the invisible hierarchy they built in their minds, leaving them staring in disbelief. They're forced to watch as someone they tried to manage operates beyond their control, moving forward with a clarity, resolve, and autonomy that feels impossible to contain. Your path belongs to you alone, and that alone is enough to terrify anyone who thought they could direct it. Number 5. Your calm response to obstacles confused people who expected emotional collapse. Some people think they can predict you by expecting chaos. They anticipate that pressure will break you, that unexpected challenges will make you overreact, that failure or confrontation will reveal the cracks they're waiting to exploit. They're watching for emotional signals, the raised voice, the panic, the frustration, the hesitation. They assume that under stress you will bend, stumble, or show the human vulnerability they secretly count on. They plan their moves around your reactions, believing your feelings will do half the work for them. Then you respond differently. You meet obstacles not with panic, not with drama, not with desperation, but with calm. You assess, adjust, and act without giving them the satisfaction of chaos. Every misstep, every pressure point, every unexpected setback passes through you like wind through a solid structure. And to the people who are expecting cracks, this behavior is terrifying. They've trained themselves to read signals and anticipate failure, but you refuse to provide them. You move in silence and precision, leaving them scrambling to understand how you're unshaken while the world feels heavy around them. Calmness under pressure does more than preserve your momentum. It destabilizes theirs. Observers can handle predictable emotional reactions, They can even exploit them. But when you refuse to react the way they expect, their framework collapses. Their sense of timing, control, and superiority shatters quietly but completely. They stare because they realize that the rules they relied on don't apply to you. You're operating on a plane they didn't account for, a space where observation cannot dictate outcome, and manipulation cannot succeed. This calm isn't passive. It's deliberate, unshakable, and active in its own way. It shows mastery over self, over circumstance, and over expectation. That mastery is terrifying to anyone who built a narrative around your failure. They assumed emotional collapse was inevitable. Instead, you gave them nothing to grab onto, nothing to anticipate, nothing to exploit. And in that silence, in that unshakable focus, they see what they didn't expect. A person so composed that the impossible seems almost natural. You didn't just survive the obstacle. You rewrote how people thought obstacles affected you, leaving them staring, unsettled, and quietly afraid of someone who refuses to be predictable. Number 6, they realized too late that they misunderstood your patience for weakness. Patience is one of the most dangerous traits people underestimate. Many observers assume that waiting, holding back, or observing quietly means someone is weak, unsure, or incapable. They see patience as delay, hesitation, or inability to act. They watch and wait for what they think is inevitable. A misstep, a frustration, a breakdown that confirms their assumptions. They convince themselves that while they're rushing, reacting, and forcing outcomes, you're standing still, vulnerable, and powerless. Then you act, and the entire narrative collapses. What they interpreted as weakness was never hesitation. It was preparation. What they called passivity was actually calculation. Every moment of silence, every period of observation, every delay was a conscious choice, a gathering of knowledge and strength they didn't notice. By the time they realize what's happening, it's too late. The advantage they thought they held has already shifted, quietly but decisively, into your hands. Your patience has allowed you to study, adapt, and move in ways that are invisible until the results appear. They expected impatience because impatience is easy to understand. They can predict what a reactive person will do. They can anticipate mistakes when someone rushes. But patience is different. It doesn't reveal its power until the precise moment. By holding back, you accumulate an unseen momentum that surprises everyone watching, especially those who misread your quietness as inability. That surprise isn't just inconvenient for them, it's terrifying. It forces them to confront that their judgment was flawed, that their assumptions were shallow, and that the person they tried to contain had far more strength than they ever imagined. The truth is, patience is never passive. It's an invisible weapon. It allows you to see the moves others miss, to understand what is truly happening, and to act with precision when everyone else is scrambling. They didn't just misread you, they miscalculated. And when you finally move, their disbelief is palpable. Your calm, measured approach shatters expectations, leaving them staring, unsettled, and quietly terrified of someone who can wait, endure, and strike with perfect timing. Your patience isn't weakness. It's a quiet, unstoppable power that they never saw coming. Number 7. Your growth forced them to confront how much time they wasted watching instead of building. Some people spend more energy observing you than improving themselves. They track your moves, analyze your decisions, and whisper about your potential, all while their own progress stagnates. They convince themselves that monitoring you counts as strategy, that keeping tabs is preparation, and that critiquing from the sidelines makes them relevant. They become spectators of your life, secretly believing that your success depends on their approval, commentary, or attention. Then growth happens. real, undeniable, unstoppable growth. And suddenly, the same people who spent hours theorizing about you are faced with a stark, uncomfortable truth. They've wasted their time. While they were busy measuring you, criticizing you, and predicting your failures, you were building, learning, experimenting, and moving forward. Your advancement doesn't just reveal skill, it exposes their distraction. Every milestone you reach, every problem you solve, and every boundary you cross highlights the silent cost of their inaction. Watching someone rise when you've spent your time watching them doesn't just irritate, it humiliates. Their disbelief isn't random, it's guilt masquerading as astonishment. They realize too late that they were passive while you were active. They begin to see how much potential they wasted chasing the wrong things. Their own illusions of control over your trajectory, the imagined influence they believed they had, or the mental energy spent doubting you instead of investing in themselves. Your growth is a mirror they can't look away from, reflecting everything they neglected while they assumed you would stay small, predictable, or contained. What terrifies them isn't that you succeeded. It's that your success exposes the choices they didn't make and the time they lost. It forces them to confront the reality that growth isn't just about skill, it's about consistency, action, and focus. And they see clearly now that while they were spectators, you were building an unstoppable path. That realization unsettles them more than any challenge could, leaving them staring in disbelief at someone who quietly accomplished what they only theorized about, while they wasted precious moments wondering if you ever would. Number 8. They expected your environment to limit you permanently. People love to believe that your surroundings define your destiny. They convince themselves that where you're from, who you know, or what resources you have automatically sets your ceiling. They assume that the pressures, limitations, and obstacles around you are chains, and that you will be confined by them, restricted to the boundaries they've drawn in their own minds. They watch, waiting for these inevitable constraints to stop you. Every setback they notice, every struggle, every moment of scarcity becomes proof in their heads that you are limited, that your potential is fixed. Then you move, and their assumptions collapse instantly. They see you achieving, creating, and thriving in ways that shouldn't be possible according to the rules they made up for you. They stare because your environment, the very thing they assumed would control or define you, hasn't dictated a single outcome. You took what they thought were walls and used them as springboards. You took scarcity and transformed it into resourcefulness. You took limitations and turned them into leverage. That's terrifying because they believed in a universe where limits are absolute, predictable, and enforceable. You just proved they are not. It's not luck, it's not cheating, it's a quiet refusal to conform to other people's definitions of possibility. Your progress demonstrates that the real boundaries aren't external, they are internal. And when someone consistently acts beyond the confines of what everyone else expected, it challenges the very way people perceive reality. They realize that their predictions were only as strong as their imagination, and that imagining limits doesn't create them in real life. That shock, that sudden disruption of their mental model, is what leaves them staring unsteady and unsettled. They aren't just witnessing success, they're witnessing a person who refuses to be defined by circumstances, a person who makes impossibility look routine. Every move you make outside the cage they imagined is a silent declaration. The world cannot contain you, and neither can anyone's assumptions. In that realization, they feel the edge of fear, because it's not about what you achieved. They see that their own framework of reality is fragile, and you're operating beyond it. Number 9. They thought your kindness meant you didn't understand what was happening around you. People have a strange way of reading kindness as naivety. When you act with patience, empathy, or generosity, Many assume you're unaware, unprepared, or incapable of seeing the layers of manipulation, competition, and hidden agendas around you. They whisper that you're soft, that you won't notice the traps laid in your path, that your good nature is a weakness they can exploit. They expect that someone so kind will falter when the real pressure comes, that they can outmaneuver you while you're busy being considerate or polite. Then you do the terrifying thing. You succeed anyway. You navigate challenges, outsmart opponents, and achieve results without compromising your integrity. Your kindness never made you blind. It made you strategic in a way they could not see. Every act of patience, every moment of restraint, every quiet show of understanding was part of a larger awareness they didn't anticipate. They expected a reactive, obvious response to adversity, but instead they see calm control paired with decisiveness, and it completely breaks the narrative they had built. The real shock comes when they realize kindness and awareness are not opposites. You can be considerate and still untouchable. You can listen without being fooled, empathize without being exploited, and act with moral clarity without losing an ounce of efficiency or power. They misread you because they underestimated the depth of someone who refuses to sacrifice humanity for strategy. Watching you operate with this combination of compassion and effectiveness forces them to reconsider everything they thought they knew. It's unsettling because they were counting on your kindness to be your undoing, your soft spot to be the leverage point, and your integrity to slow you down. Instead, every step you take proves that their assumptions were shallow. They stare because they realize their predictions were not just wrong. They were based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how strength can manifest. Your kindness doesn't make you weak. It makes you untraceable, unpredictable, and unshakable in ways they can't touch, and that impossibility terrifies them more than anything else. Number 10. Your consistency quietly defeated strategies designed to exhaust you. Some people believe that the easiest way to stop someone is to wear them down. They rely on tactics that are subtle but effective: constant pressure, endless distractions, micro-conflicts, and strategically timed obstacles. They assume that over time you'll become tired, frustrated, or distracted enough to falter. They trust that persistence alone, applied against you, will eventually reveal cracks they can exploit. They count on exhaustion as if it were a weapon stronger than skill, determination, or focus. Then you respond in a way that terrifies them without fanfare. You stay consistent. You don't react to every provocation. You don't overextend yourself to prove a point. You don't rush just to satisfy external expectations. Instead, you move forward steadily, day after day, step after step, while the people trying to trip you up exhaust themselves trying to predict your breakdown. Your consistency isn't flashy or dramatic. It's invisible until it's undeniable. They realize, often too late, that their strategy was built around the assumption that fatigue would eventually win. Consistency is underestimated because it seems boring, routine, and small. But when someone refuses to be derailed by chaos, when they keep producing results no matter the interference around them, it looks impossible to observers. Every small, repeated effort accumulates quietly into a force that cannot be ignored. And for the people who expected failure, that accumulation is terrifying. They didn't just miscalculate your abilities, they miscalculated your endurance. What leaves them staring is the realization that strategy alone cannot overcome someone who refuses to be shaken. You didn't need to counterattack, argue, or react emotionally. You didn't even need to announce your progress. You just kept showing up, performing, and advancing while the noise around you consumed everyone else. Their tactics failed not because they were weak, but because they relied on assumptions about human behavior that you refused to confirm. In that steady, unyielding movement, they witnessed the quiet power of someone who is untouchable by fatigue, immune to distraction, and unstoppable, simply because consistency became their weapon. Number 11. They expected your past mistakes to define your ceiling permanently. Some people never stop measuring you against the mistakes you made long ago. They remember every misstep, every failure, every moment you stumbled, and they frame your potential around it. In their eyes, who you were yesterday is who you will always be tomorrow. They assume that a single mistake, or a series of them, locks you into a permanent narrative of limitation. They don't see growth, they see proof, and they treat it like a rule etched in stone. Every success they see is filtered through this lens of expectation, and every prediction about your future is constrained by their memory of your past. Then you move. You rise. You deliver results that they assumed were beyond your reach, and suddenly their entire framework collapses. The ceiling they imagined for you, the one built from your history, your errors, and their judgment, is irrelevant. You show them that mistakes are not permanent stains, but lessons, that failure is not a destination, but a stepping stone. Every action you take in defiance of their assumptions highlights how deeply wrong they were to confine you to an outdated version of yourself. The terror for them isn't just that you succeeded, it's that your growth exposes their stubbornness. They realize that they were measuring a moving target with a fixed yardstick, that their judgments were based on incomplete understanding, and that their certainty about your limitations was a mirage. They stare because they can see the truth they refused to acknowledge. Progress doesn't erase the past, but it makes it irrelevant. They believed your mistakes defined you permanently, but what they didn't expect is that you could evolve quietly, steadily, and decisively into someone unrecognizable to those who tried to box you in. Your past doesn't set your limits, your present actions do. And when you surpass what they thought was possible, their disbelief is palpable. They are forced to reconcile the person they watched stumble with the person who now operates beyond expectation. That reconciliation is uncomfortable, unsettling, and sometimes frightening because it reveals that their predictions were never reality. They were simply the result of their refusal to see who you truly are. Number 12. You solved problems quietly that they assumed would stop you publicly. Some people watch for the breakdown moments. They expect pressure points to break you, challenges to stop you, and obstacles to become visible failures. They assume that every problem, every complication, will manifest in ways they can see, ways they can exploit, and ways that will confirm their narrative about your limits. They anticipate public struggle, visible hesitation, or some form of audible panic. Their strategy relies on the belief that your reactions will be as loud as their expectations. Then you handle it quietly. You navigate the difficulties, solve the problems, and neutralize the threats without broadcasting any of it. While they're waiting for a spectacle, a reaction, a collapse, you're already several moves ahead, clearing hurdles in silence. Every obstacle they assumed would derail you becomes a stepping stone instead, and when the results appear, it looks sudden, impossible, and almost magical to them. What terrifies them isn't that you succeeded, it's that you succeeded without them seeing a single misstep along the way. They are unsettled because they built their expectations around visibility. They thought the world works in a way that exposes weakness, that struggle is obvious, that failure is inevitable under pressure. But you operate in a way that makes the process invisible. You act before the noise forms, solve problems before attention turns to them, and move forward while observers are still preparing to watch you falter. That invisibility is powerful because it removes the tools they were counting on: prediction, reaction, and manipulation. They assumed you'd be predictable, but your quiet action made you untraceable. The real shock comes when they realize their strategy depended on waiting for public failure. They thought challenges were enough to stop you because everyone else would struggle under the same weight. You didn't just handle pressure, you neutralized it silently, and that silence is terrifying to people who assumed drama, struggle, or collapse would be unavoidable. You didn't make your survival public, you made it unstoppable. And now, watching your results appear as if by magic, they are left staring, trying to comprehend a process they weren't meant to see, and a person who refuses to be predicted or contained. Number 13. Your resilience exposed who was secretly hoping you wouldn't make it. Some people are quiet in their opposition. They don't confront you openly, they don't engage in obvious sabotage, and they don't make themselves obvious. Instead, they wait, they watch, they calculate, and deep down, they hope you'll stumble, fail, or disappear without having to do the dirty work themselves. Their support is conditional, their smiles are measured, and their conversations are carefully curated so you never realize who is really in your corner and who is not. They assume that time, pressure, or circumstance will do their work for them, quietly proving that you weren't meant to rise. Then you show resilience. You endure, adapt, and move forward no matter what they hoped would stop you. Every challenge they assumed would crush you is met with calm determination. Every expectation of your failure is quietly overturned, and as you keep rising, the invisible fabric of their strategy unravels. They realize that the hope they clung to, that you would falter under the right conditions, is meaningless when faced with someone who refuses to be broken. Your persistence doesn't just defy the odds, it exposes the hidden motives of those around you. The same people who smiled while pretending neutrality now find themselves caught in disbelief, their secret bets on your failure revealed in plain sight. The unsettling truth for them is that your resilience is not just about survival. It's a mirror. It forces them to see who they are when no one is looking, who they were quietly rooting against while pretending to be indifferent. They didn't just miscalculate your strength, they misjudged their own. Every time you move forward, you shine a light on the hypocrisy, envy, or fear that hid behind their polite gestures. Watching you endure without breaking exposes not just your power, but their own moral and emotional compromises, leaving them uncomfortable, unsettled, and quietly aware that their hidden agendas failed. Your resilience is a silent reckoning. It doesn't need to confront anyone directly. It simply exists, unstoppable, undeniable, and revealing. And in that revelation, everyone who secretly doubted, feared, or hoped against you is forced to watch, stare, and reckon with the truth. You were never theirs to control, and their quiet scheming cannot stop the momentum of someone who refuses to be defeated. Number 14. The real reason they stare is because your story forced them to question what's possible for themselves. When people watch someone pull off the impossible, it doesn't just impress them, it disturbs them. Deep down, they start measuring themselves against you, and that measurement is uncomfortable. Your story forces them to confront a truth they rarely admit. Their own limits might be self-imposed, their fears might be imagined, and their excuses might be nothing more than barriers they convinced themselves were real. Watching you succeed in ways they believed were impossible cracks the foundation of everything they've told themselves about what they can and cannot do. It's terrifying because they thought they understood the rules of life. They assumed effort, talent, and circumstance created a predictable map of possibility. Then you appear, moving beyond those boundaries, achieving outcomes they quietly labeled unreachable, and suddenly the map they've been following is meaningless. Their sense of certainty falters, and their mental models of the world start to crumble. They stare because you've revealed a gap between belief and reality, a space where determination, strategy, and vision exist untouched by their expectations. The fear is subtle, but powerful. It's not that they are angry at your success. It's that your success forces them to recognize that stagnation, hesitation, and self-doubt may have been choices, not limitations. They feel the weight of what they've left undone, the opportunities they ignored, and the potential they refused to pursue. Your story acts like a mirror, reflecting possibilities they had never seriously considered for themselves. And it's in that reflection that they are unsettled. They can't reverse what they've seen, and they can't ignore it either. Your achievements challenge the very narratives they've built to justify their inaction. You operate in a space that feels almost impossible because they assumed impossible was a wall, when in reality, it's just an invitation. Watching you rewrite what is possible forces them into a confrontation with their own choices, leaving them staring in disbelief, envy, and a quiet, unavoidable self-awareness. You are more than a story of success. You are proof that limits are negotiable, and that realization terrifies everyone who thought they had already defined the boundaries of their own potential. Every move you make, every challenge you overcome, and every boundary you shatter tells a story far bigger than anyone watching realizes. You are not just succeeding. You are rewriting expectations, dismantling assumptions, and quietly exposing the hidden agendas, doubts, and insecurities of everyone who thought they had you figured out. From your calm under pressure to your patience, from the quiet solutions you implement to the unstoppable consistency you maintain, everything you do becomes a mirror that reflects not just your strength, but the fragility of the systems and minds that tried to define you. People stare because they are forced to confront a truth they've been avoiding. The impossible isn't impossible. It was just untested, unimagined, and underestimated. Your kindness doesn't make you weak. Your independence doesn't make you reckless. Your resilience doesn't just protect you, it exposes who was secretly hoping for your failure. Every victory, every silent step forward, every boundary you cross reminds them that the rules they believed in don't apply to you. They didn't miscalculate your power, they miscalculated themselves. And in that realization lies the subtle, unshakable terror they can't put into words. You aren't performing magic. You aren't lucky. You are mastering the art of being unpredictable, unstoppable, and untouchable. You operate beyond the limits they assumed were fixed, proving that control, influence, and expectation mean nothing against someone who refuses to be contained. Your story doesn't just inspire, it challenges, it unsettles, and it forces everyone around you to confront the uncomfortable truth. They underestimated what a human being can truly achieve when they refuse to conform to other people's boundaries. So, own it. Move with quiet precision, act without hesitation, and let them stare while you keep redefining the impossible. If you want more insights like this, strategies that show you how to operate beyond the expectations of the world, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and leave a comment below with the part that shook you the most. Every like, every share, and every comment helps this message reach the people who need it most, and reminds the world that the impossible is nothing compared to the relentless, unstoppable person you are becoming. God bless you.